Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's HBCU Game Day. There's been a lot of talk this week. It's summertime. We put out our preseason poll for FCS football in the HBCU universe, and a lot of people, they had a lot to say. They took issues, which you're supposed to. That's the fun of polls. So let's get into it and let's talk about it. But first, in case you missed it, let's run down the polls. We had Jackson State first, preseason poll, followed by FAMU, South Carolina State, Southern, Tennessee State, Alabama A&M, North Carolina A&T, Alcorn State, Prairie View A&M, and Norfolk State. I think the first point of contention that people had was South Carolina State, as the defending Celebration Bowl champions, should be number one heading into the 2022 preseason poll, but they were number three. I'm going to start with Wally Pitt because whether you know it or not, he is in my book, Wally is a bit of a stand for South Carolina State. And Wally, you made the argument that you also thought South Carolina State should be number one heading into the season.
I did, and I'm a Carolina kid, so that's gonna come natural. But for me, the preseason poll isn't as much of like a prediction as a like, okay, where are we when we start the journey that is the season? And for me, when you look at the future, you got to look at the past. So I started with where would we have been after the Celebration Bowl, right? And coming into the Celebration Bowl, I probably would have had South Carolina State like 3 or 4, just because they won the MEAC and where they ended. FAMU lost, they would have been number 2, and then they beat Jackson State. And so, with us not being in a playoff, it's kind of like that old BCS model, right? And that's how it used to happen all the time back in the day, is like if the top team lost that bowl game where they got to come down because they lost the game. You know what I mean? And it was 31-7. South Carolina State lost Jacoby Durant and one other guy. And we know that, like, I'm not going to say they got Jacoby Durant just lying around, but like South Carolina State, like they got players. So for me, they didn't lose a lot. They won the game. They brought back the whole offense. And so to start the season, I feel like they should be number one. Now, I mean, I definitely ain't mad at Jackson State because, they literally have a 5-star player who's about to play for them. So, like, I ain't mad at people who chose Jackson. But for me and how I'm going to do my poll, which is more of a, again, it's not like a prediction. This ain't like who I think going to win. It's like, where are we when we start this season? And I'm going to respect the champion, and they on top. And they let me in the locker room to shoot. So, holla at your coaches. You give me locker room access. I might be now just edit that part out. I'm joking, but not for real. That's just kind of how I do it,
So for the fans that say, you all HBCU Game Day hate South Carolina State, we don't hate anyone. But Wally is our living model that we definitely don't hate on South Carolina State. Let's go over to Stephen J. Gaither, HBCU Game Day founder here. Steve, if memory serves me correct, you did not have South Carolina State number one in your poll.
I didn't have South Carolina State number 1, number 2. I'm gonna be real. I didn't even have number 3. I had him at 4. So yeah, my top 4 was JSU, FAMU, and maybe I was drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. I had A&T over South Carolina State. I had a reason why though, but I had A&T over South Carolina State. For me, it's like, who are the best teams? Like if they all played or throughout the season, who's going to be the best teams? And I had South Carolina State. I was back and forth between 3 and 4. I put A&T over them because they did eke out the win over them, and A&T also did beat runner-up North Carolina Central in the MEAC as well. So but South Carolina State, obviously, they're feeling good about beating Jackson State, being the Celebration Bowl champs, and to take nothing away from them. They got a lot of talent coming back too, but I just felt like the MEAC honestly was so close, even within the MEAC, that I don't know. They could definitely get back again. They could not get back again. But yeah, so I had South Carolina State lower than Wally for sure. But yeah.
All right, Kobe Simmons, Jacoby. HBCU Game Day North. Where did you fall on the South Carolina State in the preseason poll?
Well, I thought actually that any of them could have been anywhere. I truly believe that South Carolina State could be number 1. number 2, or number 3. I actually placed them number 2 because I think it's an arms race for at the top. We know that Buddy Poe gets these guys that everybody's not necessarily looking for and builds them up. And he has a loaded team with the same people. Corey Fields coming back. I just had a brain fart. The running back coming back, Jablonski Green coming back on defense, and they're really ready to rock and roll. But who can excuse the talent that Deion Sanders has brought in? So I thought South Carolina State could be at any of those 3 places. I personally put them at, I believe, number 2. And I also believe that they could be number 1 because I have to always count on Buddy.
So that was a great way to toe the line. Like, hey, I put you at number 2, but you could have been number 1. I mean, Jacoby, I would have loved to see you in your heyday, man, just on the yard. You were like, hey, young lady, you're number 2. You could be number 1. Like, you seem like you had a lot of game that you're leaning on there. But we appreciate you riding the fence there, Kobe. See, a good player knows when to stop talking there. So Kobe's like, let's stay away from that. I had South Carolina State at number 3. And let's transition to this. I read the comments and I enjoy the conversation that people have. But the one thing that people seem to kind of forget in this preseason poll argument, the recruiting class that Jackson State has brought in, the number 1 player in high school last year is a part of this year's team. He was not a part of last year's team. And what Travis Hunter will or will not be able to do, time will tell. But the little bit of data we've seen from the spring game, he looks to be pretty awesome. Kevin Coleman looks to be pretty awesome. You look at the other signees that Jackson State has, I think this will be an improved team. So in my position, they will be the team to beat because of what they return and what they've added on. I think last season everybody kind of figured out what they were doing offensively. That kind of caught up with them. They looked stagnant in the SWAC championship game, looked stagnant, very stagnant in the Celebration Bowl. Coach Sanders addressed that, got a new offensive coordinator in there. So it's not like they're just running it back. So that was, kind of my status. Let me ask Steve this. Steve, it seems like we've had a bit of a sea change, and that may be odd to say a bit of a sea change because that's a little and a lot. But there's been a jump in the amount of information we now have about recruits and what HBCU schools will look like. I think there's been a culture in place where before, for a very long time, we didn't know what the team was going to look like. So we just said, well, however you look last year, unless you graduated like everybody, we think you're pretty much going to look like that this year. And that's what preseason polls have generally been. But Steve, we have lots of information now about new players and good players coming in that we've never had before that gives us more of a, I think, an educated opinion about these polls, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, social media has been around for years, but it used to come a point in time where signing day would come and it would only be one time a year in February. And we would be in the middle of basketball season and people would ask us to rank the top classes or, ask opinions about certain things. And it would be tough to do. I think it's a lot easier now with some of the recruiting websites. Also now, some of the high school kids are, they're happy for any offer that they get. So we can kind of monitor during the year who's being offered where and kind of follow them. And when they commit, get that information. And then also just the transfer portal itself. So many guys coming from, or they came from this, or they had this many stars. So I think all of those things together have added for a lot more, as you say, knowledge coming in to the football season about not only who graduated and who's coming back, but also who's coming in, who could be an impact player early on. A lot of times that's transfer stuff. And then also, just paying a little bit more attention to the high school ranks. I know, speaking of South Carolina State, they got a pair of kids from Greensboro that I followed during their high school season. And I think they're going to make a really great impact down there at South Carolina State. So, I think it's definitely opened up a new level of knowledge to us and nuance that probably wasn't there before.
All right, let's go overrated, underrated, and maybe even left out. Wally, who's on this poll, top 10, that's overrated, who's underrated, and who, if anybody, do you think was left out?
Man, I'm not prepared for that. That's a good question.
So look, we
I
got
would,
Jackson, FAMU, South Carolina State, Southern, Tennessee State, A&M, A&T, Alcorn State, Prairie View,
well,
Norfolk.
you just ran it down. Tennessee State. No disrespect, but like I don't know what y'all saw in Tennessee State that had Tennessee State up there. That's probably the best part of doing this rankings to me is like, we talk all the time. I thought we were all going to have very, very similar. And I saw Tennessee State and everybody else, and I was like, what? Huh? What did they do? I just don't, maybe it's just me, lack of awareness on my end, but you asked me that question and I didn't even think that Tennessee State was on there till you said it. And then I was like, oh, them. So like that's pretty much what it is. Again, no disrespect. I hate that, I like talking like this, but the team still got to go play.
They're going to be in the Big Blue's going to be in the comments. You know that.
Again,
already.
And I'm telling everybody, look, if y'all think I hate it, when I show up to your campus with a camera, I will let you roast me on camera and I will put it on. Like this HBCU game day, baby. This is what we do. So like it's all love at the end of the day. But yeah, I don't know what y'all saw, honestly. Maybe just because I wasn't watching.
Do you have a sleeper, somebody that's on the poll that's maybe a little low that you think is going to overperform?
Man, I think it's Hampton. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know why. other than the fact that like I really feel like they've been that team that's just been kind of like slowly building. They had some injuries, they had some issues, and it just seemed like, especially once they got to that A&T game, that they were like, oh, this is who we are. And they kind of figured it out a little bit. You know what I mean? And I know they're bringing a lot of people back. If Jadakiss Bonds comes back, you know what I mean? Like, like for me, college football and the game in general is so cyclical. And that's what makes football so exciting is that like, you can do all the numbers and data and read it, and it's still going to be somebody who like pops up out of nowhere. And you're like, how did this happen? And it's like, yeah, they've been grinding it out. So, man, I think Hampton might make some noise and be the team that, especially at the end, where we like, Hampton finished what? You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, don't sleep on the boys from the Bay.
All right, let's go to the player from the Himalayas, Big Kobe. HBCU Gameday North. Kobe, who do we not give respect to on this poll? Is anybody up there that you think is overrated, or anybody that you think might have got left out, got shunned a bit?
Well, one, I'm really struggling with this, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate when I say it, but I think A&T might be a little overrated this year. They lost a lot of people. They lost a lot of people on offense. The team didn't look as strong from the injuries last year. So I'm confused about where they may be. And I don't want to say underrated, like they can't perform, but from where they were last year to where they were this year, I'm not as sure they'll be as strong as they were in past. And I think they're living off that A&T glory of previous years. And so I'm struggling. I was at the SC State game that everybody keeps talking about. They beat SC State. But Corey Fields got hurt in the second quarter, and the whole momentum shifted because SC State was limited. There was another game where it was a close game, and A&T could have won. So I'm really unsure about where they're going to be. So I don't want to necessarily say overrated, but I'm not sure. But I think there's two teams I think are underrated, and I didn't even give them the ranking, and I was wavering on that, is Graham and Howard. Now, one, I'm interested in see what Graham's going to do because of the recruiting class Hugh Douglas has, and all of the things that they're bringing and the firepower he's bringing, because the SWAC is really an arms race. But Howard is doing some interesting things, and I think the culture shifted Howard, the players that they brought in, and they were extremely young with injuries. And if you've seen a lot of the games that they were playing, and they were winning in the first quarter, it fell apart in the second quarter, which I attribute to being young and the culture shift. And if they can play 4 quarters, I think every team they play is going to have some problems.
All right, Hugh Jackson. I know you meant Hugh Jackson. You said Hugh Douglas there. I'm going to send you that life preserver. Don't jump on Kobe. I
was thinking of my frat brother. That's all.
Grambling is interesting. Steve, they were not on our preseason poll. That was a team that I kind of wavered on a bit too. The way I put my teams, and I always throw you guys out there, and I just ask all the questions. I never make myself vulnerable to the fans. I voted Jackson, FAMU, South Carolina State, Alabama A&M, Southern, Tennessee State, A&T, Alabama State, Alcorn State, Norfolk State. I looked at who the quarterback was supposed to be as we start the season, or who's in the running, whether that was a big-time signee at quarterback or whether that was some veteran experience returning. And the thing that I'm not saying Grambling won't do well, they just have so many new pieces, so many people coming out. There's a lot of flip-flopping. We had that period where Grambling players were, Southern players were going to Grambling. It was just a lot going on. So I'm going to be interested to see how all of that new talent, new culture, new coach gels. So I wasn't willing to put my chips in on that much newness just yet. And again, they could hit it out of the park. They could win the SWAC, and I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I'd never thought that in a million years. But I'm just kind of waiting to see on them. What were your thoughts on Grambling, Steve?
Yeah, I can see why people were, thinking that they should be a little bit higher. Obviously, this time last year we were talking about Jackson State. They had a decent spring season under Coach Prime's first season during the spring, but nothing like what we saw in the fall. But a lot of the hype about them and what people were looking forward to was who they had coming in, right? So when you have that and you juxtaposition that against Grambling, Grambling is an interesting team because they actually beat, I'm looking, 1, 2, they beat 3 teams. They beat 3 teams here that are in the top 10. So that's kind of opened my eyes to, they actually had some talent there, just had a lot of things going on. And, we don't know if they'll be able to flip the switch and do that consistently. So I can see why people at Grambling were a little bit upset with the ratings or thinking that they might sneak in. But I think one team that we're sleeping on, I hate to say sleeping on, but North Carolina Central is the team that I thought Wiley would mention them. So I was glad he didn't steal my thunder with that one. They are a team they're actually second in the MEAC, right? They were a 3-point loss away from South Carolina State at home to being in the Celebration Bowl and playing against Jackson State. And they're another one of those teams. It's just kind of like Grambling too. You look at it, they beat Alcorn State, who's made this list. They gave South Carolina State a good game. They did lose to A&T. They beat Norfolk State, who made the list. And, I had Norfolk State on my list, actually even higher than what we did. But, you have to look at North Carolina Central. Their quarterback, Davius Richard, is coming back. And they've got a lot of pieces. They're just not a sexy team. I'm just going to say it. And there's no disrespect to they're just not a sexy team. And I think, it was tough. I saw them at the MEAC SWAC Challenge. They came in and kind of jumped on Alcorn. They weren't expecting it. Then I saw them 2 weeks later against Winston-Salem State. And they were not the best team for 3 quarters and some change. And then, they were able to pull it through. And then in 2 weeks, WSSU gets 70 put on the Bachawan. So, they never really blew out teams. But again, like Wally and I saw at their homecoming game, they were never out of a game, even when we thought they would be. So, yeah, the folks in Durham, they've got a little bit of an argument for sure. So we'll see.
I will say this about Tennessee State. Tennessee State has a transfer. So pretty much the best quarterback that was in the OVC last year transferred to Tennessee State. So I did like that for them, which is why part of the reason I voted for them, kind of middle of the pack. And I felt like they had some momentum gaining under Coach Eddie George in that first season. So I'm betting on Tennessee State 2.0. I view Grambling as new technology 1.0. Like, hey, I liked the iPod when it first came out, but boy, that second and third generation, there was a whole lot of improvement. So that's kind of my working theory on my opinion of Grambling there. A couple of teams let's talk about. Rapid fire. Anybody can jump in here. FAMU. Does anybody anticipate FAMU potentially or having the potential to win the SWAC outright this year?
If I was, go ahead, you got it, Coach.
Oh, I was gonna say I think they're extremely strong, and like I said, it's an arms race in the top of the SWAC, and they brought in a lot of good athletes. But the thing that I kind of look at is the consistency, the coach, and the culture. Tradition doesn't graduate, and I believe that they have the culture, they have the coach, and now they're bringing players that fit into their system well. And they got a lot of returning players. So I'm expecting to see big things from FAMU.
Well, as the only non-college graduate here, I'm getting tradition never graduates tatted, like thug life. Like no, I'm just playing. If I was betting money, I'd probably bet on FAMU. They're probably the team that's like got the like middle odds with the most bang. Like I would not be surprised if FAMU comes out and really just starts Rick James in people's couches. You know what I mean? Like, so like I like FAMU a lot. Like again, if I was picking a predictive poll, FAMU would be very, very high. But like I like FAM, and I'm definitely gonna make a trip to go see him.
All right, Alcorn State. Steve, will Alcorn State return to the top of the division this year? It's the second year in a new division in the SWAC. Can they return to previous form this season?
Absolutely. And I say that where this is the first time in years we don't really know who the quarterback is coming in at Alcorn State, but I absolutely have faith in Coach McNair. Faith in what they do. I think Alcorn State is definitely a team that, we could definitely see them in the SWAC championship game or, maybe even the Celebration Bowl. I think, last year was a season they sat out 2020 like everybody else. And unlike everybody else, they just had so many things going against them last fall, I thought. But I think this year, the SWAC West, we've got Southern up there. I'm going to say Southern's probably the most overrated team on the poll overall, to be honest with you. Sorry to my friends in Baton Rouge. Obviously, so I think that the SWAC West, honestly, is wide open where I think everybody but Texas Southern, I'm giving a chance to win. So,
come on, man, the drip.
Oh, and Pine Bluff. Yeah, Texas Southern and Pine Bluff, they could try next year. But everybody else, I would not be surprised if they won the SWAC West.
Yeah, I had Southern high just because they were basically like one father-son moment away from beating Jackson State at home. You know what I mean? And I feel like they've, just like Tyler was saying about the recruiting, we've heard so much about all these other schools getting these recruits, and I feel like now in HBCU football, we've settled into like two schools of thought, right? We got, like Kobe saying, we got the arms racers, which are the guys who are just like, let's load up. And then you got the other teams that are like, nah, like we're going to build ours. You know what I mean? We're going to keep quiet. We're going to grind. Because like a lot of those other teams, they're going to have some rich people problems. And what I mean by that is like, if you got a team full of ones, everybody can't be a one. Somebody's going to have to be a 2 or a 3. So like what do you have in your locker room when you've got a guy who has transferred to your school to be the guy? He gets there. There's a lot of other guys, and they sitting around like, shoot, it's just like if I went to Georgia or LSU, right? Like you just sitting on a depth chart, you know what I mean? And not to pick on Jackson, but like it comes up in our chat all the time. Jackson State got like 4 teams worth of wide receivers. You know what I mean? And like you ain't taking Travis' spot. We know that off the rip. Like Kevin Coleman, he probably gonna get some burn. You know what I mean? So that's your X and your Y or whatever you call it. You know what I mean? So like a lot of these arms race teams, I feel like are going to be saddled with some rich folk problems of, man, I got a lot of guys, and some of them might be upset. And like, what's your locker room look like when like I start? You know what I mean? You might have some remember the Titans, I'm not blocking for people, you know what I mean, type of things going on. And I hope that doesn't happen, but like there's going to be 2 schools of thoughts. And just me personally, for right now, like I'm kind of leaning more towards the like, let's build our school of thought. The South Carolina States, maybe the Southerns, I didn't hear too much portal action for them, but guys who are like traditionally can bring in good players and they keep quiet about them. Southern had a guy go to the league this year. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. That's just where I stand. But as you can tell by my voice, I'm super excited, and I'm gonna kick it back to Tyler because I've been talking.
Well, I think that will be part of a way to analyze how good your coach is. Not only what they can do X's, O's, Y's and Z's and everything else, but how do they handle this newfound wealth? Because not everyone is great with new money. To kind of use your analogy there, Wally. So That'll be very interesting to see how this develops. Because look, this transfer portal is crazy. We see people commit, and you're like, all right, that school's got them, and then they're on Instagram the next day like, but yeah, I'm still going over here and I'm going over there. Steve, we had one kid that was FAMU, he was Alcorn State, and then he was Bowling Green like in 10 days. Like he committed to like everybody. So you definitely have to have a firm grasp, but yet still be relatable to the guys in your locker room. All right, let's get to final thoughts. The poll is out. People are talking. What is the one thing, Steve, you're going to watch between now, fall camp, and the start of the season?
I think we're still probably going to see some more attrition. You talk about, player movement will probably be literally up until the actual deadline when you can't move anymore. We talked about player movement. Alabama A&M just lost the quarterback, Jared Williams from Miami that was there. And you talk about coaches being able to manage that locker room and getting a lot of guys to play together. I know one guy that has definitely done it at a championship level. We haven't talked about him, Connell Maynard, Alabama A&M. He did it when he was at the D2 level, got a lot of D1 guys who were ones to come in and commit as part of a team. Can he do it at Alabama A&M, where they have, I think, the most transfers in FCS football? That'll be interesting. So they're a team, I think, they could end up being higher than where we have them, and they could end up being lower than where we have them. I think they're a team to watch, as well as the guys that were sitting on the outside looking in.
All right, Kobe handles everything in the northeast for us. Anybody gonna make any noise up north this year, Kobe?
Man, this is going to be interesting, man. Like I said, I'm excited to see Hampton. I'm excited to see Howard and what they're going to bring. And the most interesting thing that we see is going to be this what is Morgan State going to do with Damon Wilson? And how does that culture shift? And is it going to happen this year or next year? So the MEAC is getting very interesting, and I can't wait to see how those things. But I always, I got one phrase that I'm starting to use is in Buddy I Trust. And he always knows how to cultivate it. And so I'm waiting to see. And Central is always interesting too, because they're like that little dog that isn't going to fight no matter. That's always going to fight no matter who's in the yard. So the MEAC is really good. I think people are sleeping on the MEAC. They're not giving it enough credit. And I'm interested to see what they're going to do, especially in the SWAC MEAC Challenge and the Celebration Bowl. I'm really, really excited.
All right, Wally, we started with you. We'll end with you. Big storylines you're looking for week 0, week 1, that you'll kind of be anticipating throughout the summer to kick off the season.
To me, it's all about the Orange Blossom Classic. Period. That's like, for that game of that magnitude to be so early, where it is, Labor Day weekend, Miami, you know what I mean? I went last year and it was almost like it all happened so fast. You know what I mean? Like, I still am like, somebody asked me about that game and I'm like, oh, I don't remember that, because it was like, you just taking it all in. And for, that to be a 7-6 ball game, it was ugly. It was mucky. And I remember, when I was shooting, I remember joking with some of the other camera guys that were there. My boy Country Lot, he used to be at Jackson State. He's at the Jaguars. I was like, this feels like it's 1985 out here, with the game that they're playing. And that game turned out to be, the deciding factor. So to me, it's like, MEAC SWAC is going to be fun. MEAC SWAC this year is going to be like, who knows? It's going to be really, really fun. But man, the Orange Blossom Classic just feels like the most big time thing in HBCU football to me. And that's it for me. And I can't wait. I'm going to soak in the moment a little bit more this year. Because last year, man, it was, it happened so fast.
Hey, tickets on sale now, the OBC in Miami. All right, so that's our look at our preseason top 10 FCS poll. Who voted for who, why we voted, who was left out, who's overrated, who's underrated. The discussion continues in the comments. We appreciate you hanging out with us. For the player, Big Kobe, Wally, and Stephen J. Gaither, I'm Tali Carr in Atlanta. This is HBCU Game Day.
Y'all, it's game day. When the band is what you hearing, everybody here is cheering. All your worries disappearing, y'all, it's game day. Whether televised or streaming live in person while you're screaming, no more waiting, no more dreaming, y'all, it's game day. When the band is what you